One of the biggest lessons that I've learned as a professor is that I can't convince people of something, and you have to meet people where they are. What do I mean by that? It means that I need to think about where people actually are thinking and resonate with their thought processes. So it's essentially of convincing starts with a negation, right? It starts with this idea of that you're wrong and that there is a better answer, and this is probably true, right? There probably is a lot of better answers than what other people, have, or where that we understand what is true in this world, right? That's the whole thing with science, is that we know that there often is a better truth, um, but we we can't go about of negating folks, right? Like if we come with the belief that there is a solid truth and we say that this is a better option than that one, um, it doesn't necessarily work out that well. I've learned that a lot with reviewing papers, with writing my own papers. You can not, particularly people that are very smart and astute, you cannot approach the situation like that your situation is better. Instead, what you do is you come into it meeting people where they are. So you agree with exactly what other people are saying. You come into it understanding what they're doing, but then you add on to it. You add on various different layers where people can, um, you're sort of reinforcing what other people believe, and you say that as true, and you're going to add on to it. It comes into a far different approach than the sort of negation. Now, do I think that all people are correct? No, absolutely. And often, particularly when I'm writing papers, right? Particularly within the domain that I know, right? Like my domain of expertise, which is learning in medical devices, um, and failure and things like that. I probably know a lot more than most people. I'm pretty well aware of how things actually work now, um, and I'm probably the expert in that area around the world. Or maybe there's one or two other people, highly unlikely, but I'm the expert in that particular domain, so I kind of know better, right? But um, does that come across as not necessarily all that nice? Does that sort of acknowledge, and you think about the psychology of other people and you think about how they're feeling? No, right? It does not come across that well, and it ends up making more tension within the situation that really needs to be, right? Even the fact that I guarantee you're rolling your eyes right now, the fact that I said I was an expert in this particular domain. Um, I guarantee that's happening right now. But you know, if if you're to sort of realistically think about it, yes, that is true, right? Like there is very few people that are studying the thing that I'm studying. And that's just by what happens when you study something for a long time. Um, so, you know, the truth is that even though you are probably right, you have to acknowledge other people and you have to meet them where they are. And you'll see that a lot, particularly on YouTube videos that I point out, and the ones that I often actually have to tackle some very difficult problems that I feel uncomfortable talking about all the time, right? Like I feel very uncomfortable. I'm like, I don't know if I should be talking about this. I'm probably getting in trouble, and I probably am. I'm probably missing out on job opportunities and things like that. But if you watch what I'm doing in the videos and you watch what I'm doing here, is I'm coming into the situation tackling a hard problem that people are very likely to search, and people are very likely to feel, but they're not going to voice those beliefs publicly, right? They might voice those beliefs to a confidant, but not very likely. And because I know that those are opportunities, because they're not being voiced that much, right? They're not being answered, and people are tackling those issues, or people are wondering about those issues. I address them, but I come across it as, yeah, you're probably right. Um, and, here is what I do in those circumstances. Now, that is a really challenging thing because I think a lot of people think that and maybe I am negative, right? Like maybe there is a lot that's going on that I'm processing, but at the same time, I'm acknowledging this is what the majority of people are thinking, right? So I tackle hard problems where I know will resonate with people, and I come into it. In the end lesson, it's always a sneakaroo, right? And it's always this: how do I make you feel better? How do I think about this problem such that you come out of it in a better way? Right, so if I come into it, and I've only done a couple of videos where I know that I come into it and I was negative at the end because I felt particularly bad, but I'm documenting the journey, right? Um, so I'm coming into everything and thinking about it is like, hey, what is it that you are thinking about? And what is it that's not being addressed? And then coming out of it, um, going to where I wanted to go to. And that's what I'm talking about with you got to meet people where they are, right? You can't come into it. So the challenge, and it's like having an argument, right? So my wife and I have had many arguments. And if I come into it negating, it's probably not going to work out. But if I come into it thinking about how do I resolve this issue, how do I resolve it, often means that I am understanding the other person on the other side. So I'm understanding my wife on the other side. And then I think about how do we deal with this together? Now, that is that's all fine and dandy, right? Like if one side is actually doing this, and um, you have to acknowledge that even if I'm just thinking about some arguments that we've had. Um, Even if you're coming into it doing that, the other person might not be doing it. And so you have to still think about, okay, so you might want to sort of rationally do this, but you got to take a step back and say sometimes, even when you do that, it might not work out in your favor, right? And even still, that's where you keep working at it, and you keep meeting people where they are, and you think about what is it that you need to do to resolve this particular issue in the long run. So if you come into situations, think about how you can meet people where they are. It is different, and it's not going to feel great, right? Like I'm going to acknowledge that right off the get-go. It doesn't feel like you're going to win this argument, right? That's not what you're coming from. Is coming out of an empathy perspective where you are listening to what other people are saying and tackling this problem. Does that always result in a good outcome? No, right? Like many times I've just kind of had to walk away. Um, but there's room for tomorrow to try again. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.